Hi, good morning, good evening. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar on the Cord Learning Labs. Very pleased and excited to have you here and have some guests with us today. I'm Timon Sloan. I'm with the ONF. And very briefly, we're going to be covering a bit of an overview on Cord. We are excited to have AT&T here with us today to talk about sort of their vision and what they see in Cord and the Cord platform. And then we have Criterion Networks with us here today, who has an online Cord Learning Labs program for helping developers come up to speed on using Cord. And they'll be sharing some details on their platform and giving us a touch of a demonstration of what it looks like. So with that, let's dive in. So to start, I wanted to give everybody just a quick understanding of how Cord fits into the bigger picture of what we're doing here at the ONF. The ONF is an operator-led consortium. You see the 7 leading operators who founded and fund the ONF, AT&T being among the list. These operators really drive our agenda. And over the last few years, we've had a number of notable successes. The ONF is where SDN has been championed, Open Info Protocol, the ONOS platform, and now the Cord platform that we're going to be talking about today. Cord stands for the Central Office Re-Architected as a Data Center, and it relies on and uses all of these prior initiatives, from SDN all the way up through the ONOS initiative. And now Cord is starting to have some really notable impact on the industry. And you'll see here on the far right 2 recent analyst quotes who've been surveying operators worldwide and getting a sense of the level of interest and impact that Cord is in the process of having on the industry. So what is Cord? Cord is focused on the central office, which is the edge of the operator network. It is typically a windowless building that has a bunch of often sometimes decades-old equipment that connects operators' subscribers. Traditional telcos call this a central office, but the cable industry has its own terminology. The mobile industry has terminology, but in all cases, it is the very edge of the operator's physical infrastructure. And then from there, they connect out to their subscribers. There are many, many thousands of these central offices, of course, connecting to millions of subscribers. And this is the source of the greatest complexity and expense for these operators. And so our operator partners really, asked the ONF to focus on this, like what could we do to redesign and rethink the central office to bring it into the cloud era and to be able to really, reinvent how the edge of the network is constructed and thought of. Now, please click forward. So, with this, we came upon a mission for Cord, which was number 1, to achieve the economies of a data center. The data center, the cloud today, is built with a few common commodity building blocks and uses open source software and white box hardware wherever possible. To achieve the agility of a cloud provider, and that is that one can deploy new applications and new services on the same common infrastructure in days rather than it taking months or even sometimes years to deploy services, and to do all of this in an easy-to-consume platform. And that's the vision of Cord. And with that, we are now starting to achieve a massive transformation in the industry. We are converting then. Let's see. Sorry, somebody just clicked on their video, and you might want to just click it off. So we are converting then these legacy central offices using the latest of cloud, SDN, and NFT technologies to transform the industry into a data center architecture, what you see on the right here. So on the right, what you see is a traditional data center spine leaf fabric and server hardware on the bottom, plus the addition of specialized access hardware for mobile or residential subscribers. That's really what the Cord physical infrastructure looks like. But Cord is really about software. It's a whole series of different platforms and applications and VNFs that are able to deliver services for mobile, enterprise, and residential subscribers. And the recent release of Cord now includes over 25 VNFs, all in open source, all as part of the solution. With this platform, we're now starting to see significant traction across the industry. I'm not going to go into all the details here, but what you see is that, in every region, it's really the largest and most forward-thinking operators who are leveraging Cord, starting to drive it into their networks and making use of it. There's a tremendous activity and a lot of interest in Cord. You'll notice, AT&T on this list as well. We're pleased to have AT&T here, and with that, I'm going to transition to Tom Tofan.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks, everyone, for the opportunity to tell you a little bit more about what we've been thinking and how it relates to Cord. So I've been actually been involved with ONF for past 4 years or so, and with that, we've been driving some of the use cases, some of the POCs. And we're trying to create some reference platform for that regards and all of that. So one of the dilemmas, that we've been actually having for the past, many years we've been discussing is how do we transform ourselves to allow the rapid innovation, and instead of having these step functions that we deploy equipment, then we try to capitalize it, and many years later we deploy another set of equipment, new version of it, and do that. We want to be able to do this smooth transition where we can rapidly innovate and introduce new services. And to do that, that means open interfaces, both hardware and software. And that means we want to be able to avoid forklift model that we are in right now to bring in new equipment every time that there is some innovation happens in the industry. And of course, we want to position ourselves for deeper, basically cloud and data-driven environment. And the ecosystem that needs to support that means dynamic control, dynamic configuration of our network, including mobility, access, and services, as well as providing customers capabilities that they can manage some of their own policies, including giving them the slices, controlling their parameters for the slices, and being able to dynamically introduce their own policies into the services that they might introduce. So in terms of the long-term, community impact, that means that what we are trying to do is not just something that can be done within a single operator. We need to really change the ecosystem. So the artifacts are that from transformation from the industry, the operators need to change, the vendors need to change, the developers, the innovators of the maybe startups need to change. So, and that's one of the reasons that we want to be able to have this enabler, Cord, as a reference platform to really be capitalized by everyone, by the ecosystem per se. And this whole, as a community, I think this will result in a better internet infrastructure and obviously a better society as we move more towards 5G networks and more edge cloud solutions, as we go forward. So the next slide is really some of the imperatives of our open. One is opening our network, simplifying it and scale, and of course increasing the value. So with that, it means that the architecture and technology directions that we need to choose in terms of decoupling the hardware and software using basically SDN NFV, which is really at the heart of the Cord. And we designed this Cord from beginning to make sure we are following some of the primitives that requires microservices and real-time network cloud in a distributed manner. So the next slide, I think, this really means that the way that we have been deploying equipment in our central offices, Timon mentioned thousands of central offices and even more in the deeper edges and all of that. The physical equipment that we put in place, they need to transform themselves to the virtual environment where there are APIs and basically, software-driven approach where we can, tie it to our orchestration engine, hopefully ONF, where, I guess there's also getting some traction, and as well as being able to do things differently with our ecosystem. So the artificial wall that has been between the operators and the OEMs and ODMs and IC vendors and content providers in a serial fashion has to change, which means that operators need to work with the IP vendors, with the IC and chip vendors, with the ODMs, with the OEMs, and we all have to be able to innovate equally and be able to basically push the ecosystem or the innovation up towards the services that can be introduced faster, rather than waiting for the IP vendor, for the chip company to adopt their IP, or OEMs to adopt their innovation before it gets to the operator. Why not create an environment that everyone can basically introduce innovation in a faster way? So the next slide, I think, and will basically summarize the core value proposition, and everything that I said so far has been really has gone into the core environment as a reference platform, and we are really providing the road for a faster transformation of our network towards more of a SDN and NFV microservices. And core has been really giving us a lot of proof of concepts. If you look at some of the historical POCs that has happened and all of that, things that, you know, in the industry, in some cases, you know, thought it was impossible, we went and we did it, at least from proof of concept perspective, from packet optical layer to access, to virtualizing, to disaggregating the access points, including mobility and so on. We have done that. So we believe core is really aligned with our D2, AT&T's D2 and data-driven networking, and it is helping us to transform us towards more of a white box solution. And that's one of the reasons that we need to have more developers basically skilled in core, and both vendors and operators need, of course, to skill themselves. And I'm so glad this will tie into the next talk, that we are going to have some training available by Naresh.
Yeah, hi folks. Thank you, Timon and Tom, for setting the context. We are glad to be part of this webinar, and I'll be walking you through the how can one participate in this program and develop the core skills. So I'm Naresh Tukani, and I work as a director for consulting and learning organization within Criterion Networks. And primarily, the journey has started quite long with ONF, and we have been working closely with them in terms of developing the outline and the content in collaboration with ONF. And as Tom was rightly mentioned, there seems to be some fundamental elements that one needs to understand in terms of getting started with this journey on embracing and accomplishing themselves with their new skill sets. So in that context, we have come up with the 3 primary learning labs. The first one is a core network management lab, and the second one is a core virtual networks, and the third one is a core services framework. And the focus has been all along in terms of explaining the underlying technology and the components and how the sequence of interaction happens within the core environment. I'll be walking through some initial demo of how you can get a feel of the environment and what you can expect from all the 3 courses. And finally, we will also see some online subscription-based pricing model on how the individual professionals or the corporates can sort of purchase as use this program. So at a high level, these are the breakdown of the exercises that we are going to have in all 3 labs. So primarily on the lab 1, which is the network management, while I'll be sharing the slide deck at the end of the session, the key idea here is that the initial focus is on understanding the SDN infrastructure simulation and the open flow, which is a predominant protocol which is used in the core environment. And it helps you in terms of efficient debugging tools of how you can sort of debug the networks. And then once we have a network infrastructure simulated, we are going to connect that to the ONOS SDN controller. So this will give the participants a way to debug the ONOS controller. How can they sort of install the applications and debug the environments should there be any error in the system? And the second lab is going to focus on the virtual networks, which is fundamentally the OpenStack bring up, right? So we see a number of OpenStack key concepts are used within the core environment, and participants need to understand in a way so that they can sort of understand the back-end mechanics of what is happening when the high-layer orchestrators are sort of spinning up the services. So here they can get to understand the basic OpenStack environment. And then now they are going to sort of integrate whatever the previous concepts that were learned, like the ONOS, the OpenFlow. Now they can integrate concepts within the OpenStack. So the OpenStack Neutron ML2 integration with the ONOS controller, and what kind of information flow across these two softwares and related exercise around that. So as you see, the first lab is all about understanding the SDN context, and the second lab is about understanding more towards the cloud environment and how can the SDN controller can integrate with the cloud environment to manage the services. And the third lab is the CORD services framework. And the overall idea here is that now we are going to introduce even one more component like Exos orchestrator, and how it can sort of integrate with now both OpenStack and ONOS integration, and what kind of integration points are there, and how the sort of information workflow happens in this area. And once you are familiar with the respective GUIs of all the softwares and what kind of services that one needs to ensure that CORD is ensuring if it's working, once you're comfortable with that, we are going to specifically look at a residential CORD use case. And using that, we're going to do some sort of a deep dive into the packet flow, about how the packet goes from the subscriber client that you simulate at one end all the way to the internet with the help of the Docker container related the services that you have within the CORD. So this should give a pretty much high-level overview that we believe that sets the context for the guys who are sort of coming very fresh into the ecosystem, or the senior networking people who have been sort of used to the traditional networking can start embracing this journey. I just want to highlight this slide in the sense that the labs that you're going to do are going to be on a multi-node environment. So this will sort of replicate your close to your production environments. You can have a real-time service load balancer where you can load balance the real services. You can have an OpenStack environment, ONOS and the Exos out there. And based on the lab program that you're going through, the multiple components keep on adding and to make the lot more complex and more deep dive as well. As you can see, we are going to simulate a lot of subscriber clients, and we are going to do a packet walkthrough completely from end to end. We are going to debug the rules on the VXLAN so that you get a very good hands-on feel in terms of how actually the packets are moving in the system. And in the context of what kind of releases that we are looking at, given that the concept that we are targeting initially is predominantly the golden concepts, right? Like a basic setting context. And this is the first program that we are walking through. We have focused on the CORD 3.0 release and the SDN controller, which is ONOS, and the OpenStack Kilo version predominantly, which comes under the CORD 3.0 release itself. And some of these concepts are going to be very much consistent until a lot more time. But however, we will be adding more programs later on in order to sort of catch the pace with the programs like the RCORD, MCORD, and the other use cases that are coming up onto the CORD infrastructure. And in terms of how one can sort of start this journey, I'll have a live demo right now in terms of how we can navigate through the environment. So primarily that we are having an academy.criterionnetworks.com website. So you can sort of go there and you can sign up with us directly. And once you go there, let me do a live demo. And however, I have sort of kept this on the YouTube as well so that you can go back on as a later reference. So let me go back to a quick demo. So as you can see my screen, I have just logged into the system. And once you go to the home option here, we can sort of see all the courses that are available. And primarily, we are talking of the CORD network management, the CORD virtual networks, and the CORD services framework. And you can quickly sort of go through this program and understand primarily what you get from the course and etc. And then once you go to the next option, you can sort of visualize what kind of modules that you're going to learn here, okay? And then once you're able to sort of go there and understand the modules, right? So one can go ahead and launch the session. And once they launch the session, they can go to their own labs that they have subscribed to. And we recommend a continuous progression for the new beginners so that they can start off with the network management lab, then go to the virtual network and CORD services so that they can sort of have a progressive way of learning the things. And for the demo, for example, you can go to the labs when the lab is launched. One can always go inside the lab environment here and sort of ensure that they can visit the respective exercises about how can they navigate through the environment here. And the other interesting thing is that the flexibility in terms of you can sort of access the environment itself. So once you can log into the devices, there are multiple exercises that you'll be going through. For example, if it is an ONF topology and the related exercises, there are a lot of exercises that one can go through in a step-by-step fashion and sort of understand their concepts and build on the concepts. So there are multiple exercises, as you can see, like leaf spine topology, how you can connect to the ONF controller and play with the network. How can you dump the rules on the ONF? So this will give definitely a good context for the engineers to get started in this, the core itself. I'll quickly walk through a quick exercise here on how you can sort of access the nodes as well in a very easy way, so that you can get to understand what we are talking here. So as you can see here, there are in this basic lab, we have 2 nodes that we are focusing out of all the multi-node environment. And maybe if you want to access this specific node, you can click on this element here, and it will connect to the respective console immediately. And now, so the focus can be dedicated completely on the exercises themselves. So in case if you want to see some exercises like this, you can copy this content from here, and you can paste a content here, right? And you can sort of go through the program. So maybe I'll not do, in the interest of time, not too many comments here, but one way to start the ONF controller itself, right? So this will bring up an ONF environment. You can sort of see what kind of applications it has and everything like that, okay? And along with this, we do have an in-depth packet flow overview itself. So I'll just take a minute here to show that some of the labs that we have designed in the context of multiple different packet flows, multiple different subscriber clients can come into the infrastructure, and you can sort of have a deep dive into how the packets are moving in the system as well. Okay. Right. So let me go back to the slide deck here. And for the interest of everyone, I have posted it on the YouTube as well. You can check it out. And coming to the individual pricing on how you can purchase the lab program with the main intent of managing the cloud infrastructure and the content here. So on each of these labs are sort of around $125 for the individual professionals to purchase. And the lab usage hours is going to be 24 hours. However, the exercises that we have seen so far will typically take around 4 to 5 hours based on how intensive you are with the CLI and the commands. So we are probably providing the sufficient time in terms of 6 times of the actual maximum time that is required for each lab, so that you're comfortable, you can do it multiple times to get the feel of the hands-on commands itself. And then the subscription itself is valid for 1 month, right? And the lab usage hours, as when the 24 hours are completed, the lab expires, right? And on the other hand, for a corporate pricing, for those who are looking to have your engineers go through, a large set of engineers go through the program itself, you can reach out to us at cordlabs@opennetworking.org, where we can work with you in terms of having a subscription license for a block of hours that are multiple number of users over a period of time. And additionally, we can also work with you in case if you're interested in having a one-day virtual card session for the team to get started upon, or some complex sandboxes, so that you can help customize to specific to your requirements as well. So we can customize in the context of corporate pricing. So what you can expect from the program itself is that the lab usage hours, obviously, to do the exercises, and then an email-based support so that we'll be glad to help you to make sure your learnings are successful. And then in the case of any virtual sessions so that you have subscribed, you can have an instructor-based sessions in that context. And finally, you can expect a completion certificate saying that you have gone through all the 3 modules, and that will help you set the context for your next later certifications that might come in the industry. So I'll take a pause here. So we'll be glad to take any of the questions and answers in the remaining time that we have.
Hi, Naresh. I'm Dilip here. I have a question.
Yes.
So, Naresh, is there any, before even the lab, is there any training we need to go through just in order to come to the basic knowledge and then the lab part?
Okay. So here the prerequisites are, at least we're expecting that you should have a familiarized environment, at least on the basic concepts of SDN. But however, if you're getting started, as I had told you, you can reach out to us about any specific sessions that you're looking at in an instructor-based thing from your organization perspective. And however, if you're only looking from an individual perspective, just to get started, we can provide you some good links that you can help, so you can go through and go through the concepts.
Yeah, I'm looking for individual contact, and I need to know who I should ask for in your organization, or any email I should send. I don't have any contact information.
I'll be sharing the slide deck at the end of the session, so you'll be having all our details. For now, you can reach out to cordlabs at opennetworking.org, as I have mentioned in the previous slide, and we'll be glad to assist you in your requirements.
Okay, now coming back to the lab, so all.
Can we move on to somebody else? A second question. Okay. So, and please, you can also enter questions by chat, but just to manage this, because we have a number of people online. So there's a question around BNG support. So yes, Cord does include BNG subscriber management services for residential subscribers. There's a question in the chat too around the time 24 hours for the labs. And so I think I want to make it clear that it doesn't mean you have to complete the lab in one day. It means you get 24 hours of active time while you're logged in and doing work within the lab. And it's estimated that you would only actually need about 4 hours of active time on a lab to complete one of the labs. And any other questions? So we're going to be recording this and forwarding out. And I think another question just came in about academic pricing. I think you need to connect directly to Criterion to discuss that. Jayshree just shared in chat some more information on the ONF website. OpenFlow is the only southbound protocol that's used in the labs and in Cord today. That was another question that came in. But if there, so this session is going to be recorded, and we will email out a link to this session and to some follow-up and contact information also. So if you want to learn more about the labs or contact Criterion directly, that you can go ahead and do that. So we're at our half-hour mark. Thank you everybody for participating, and thank you very much to Tom from AT&T and to Naresh. And very much appreciate your attention, and thank you again. Bye-bye.